Warning: the following contains explicit language and subject matter that may not be suitable for younger listeners, church folk, and people who enjoy kale smoothies.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to A Pod Amongst Men. I'm your host, Steve B., and this is Coffee Break Conversations for the 21st Century. This week, I have another remote podcast, as they all are these days, thanks to the pandemic. My guests today are Tony O and Jay LeVar, the two hosts of the Dad's List podcast. You probably remember them from an earlier episode we did together. This week, we were just kind of catching up on how we're all holding up with our relationships and families during the pandemic, and what little tips and tricks we've used to cope with everything, and even some of the positives that we found throughout all this. You know, it's always good to find that silver lining. So this is just a conversation we had, and of course, followed up by the new segment that I'm doing for every episode, Humble Pie, which is, my new favorite thing. We just share embarrassing stories, humbling experiences, just to remind us all that we're all human and we all screw up sometimes. So here's my conversation with Tony O and Jay LeVar. How's everybody doing?
Doing good, man. Doing good.
Yeah. Everybody staying safe right now with the pandemic?
As much as we can. But everybody's staying home.
Yeah, everybody's staying home. I'm still going into work.
I was just say, are either of you guys working?
Yeah, I'm working. My business is one of the essential business. We do stuff for Department of Defense and government and military primes, those kinds of things. So they basically said we need you guys to keep working. So that's what we're doing.
I'm right there with you, buddy. I'm in construction, so I didn't think that would be deemed essential, but if there's a school nearby, what are you going to do? In the state of New Jersey, they made like a list of all the, the exceptions they'll make, because they had the mandatory stay-at-home order. But if you're doing if you're building a school, then you're considered essential. So they left out the part where there's like a 60-story luxury high-rise next to it that we're really working on. But the school is just the loophole there. So we just found out today that a couple guys on the job tested positive. So now everybody's kind of like, what's next? But I think they're going to try to keep us open.
Yeah, my wife's a hairstylist. She's at home, so she hasn't worked in a month, and she's going crazy being here. She's kind of been spending her time doing like tutorials and videos, instructional videos and things like that. That she's been able to kind of spend her time and stay engaged with her clients and potential clients and things like that. So we're hoping when all this blows over, everyone kind of comes back, but who knows?
Yeah, that's a perfect thing to do right now, especially if you're not working, putting out content like that. That's everybody, you got like a captive audience pretty much. Like
everyone's on their phones, on Facebook or whatever all day long.
What about you?
Yeah,
Jay?
actually, Tony, I caught one of your wife's videos about how to maximize your bangs. It wasn't useful for me at the current moment, but I did catch that video. So
she's been telling everyone, don't cut your bangs. Don't do
it. No.
Try to do it on your own.
No, right now I'm just focused on the Dad's List, and I have a few other side hustles in the meantime that I'm working on right now. So I'm in the house as much as possible, but every now and then I have to leave. But I'm all gloved up and masked on, so whenever possible.
I was gonna say, how you doing with all those kids?
Exactly. And then my daughter's not doing that well with the pollen, so we have to minimize how much time she is outside as well. So it's yeah.
Yeah, it's like a double whammy. You got this and allergy season at the same time. So with all this stuff going on, like, I don't want to focus so much on like the pandemic or anything. More about how we're, dealing with the fallout of everything. How we're adjusting. Do you guys find, like, how are you affected by all this? Like, do you feel scared? Do you feel confident? Do you not believe it? What's your stance really on how this is all shaken out?
Jay, you go.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, man, it's we have to acknowledge that it's real, and we have to acknowledge all the people that's impacting, not only physically, but how it's impacting jobs and day-to-day livelihoods. And so for us and for me, it's really just a matter of like what everyone's saying, get the best information possible and make the right decisions, not only for yourself, but the people around you and the people that you may come in contact with. So at this point, I'm not trying to buck the system. I am going right along with it to, because it's more than just me. And when you have hundreds of people dying a day, it's not a great scenario. So the best I can do is just play my part and, play it safe as much as possible. So, but yeah, I'm shook up a little bit by it, but it's real.
How you feeling? You feeling good? Like, I mean, like, are you stressed out? You feel nervous about anything?
No, only because I'm more saddened by the impact that it's had than anything else. Mm-hmm. And so it's not, I'm not on high alert here at home where I'm freaking out every 5 minutes and I'm overly conscious of every little mistake that I may make. I just, again, try to cover the bases. I have my mask that every time I leave the house that goes on. I got a box of gloves that stay in the passenger seat with me. We do what we got to do here to keep the kids safe, and we just enjoy our time here as much as possible while we're home, and that includes watching movies and keeping the kids entertained and shielding them. They know what's going on, especially my two older ones that are 7 and 9, but they are, based on our attitude and our reactions, they're not freaking out either. They're more concerned about the classwork they have to do during the day than the pandemic itself. So,
how about you, Tony?
I think I'm similar to Jay. I think I probably have a little bit. Maybe I'm not as careful as Jay is with the mask and gloves. But I think he's right. There's a part that we all have to play in this, and in my mind, it's like I'm not freaking out, but I think it's the right thing to do, just to be reasonable, with things. So, wash your hands. Do it more often than you might normally do. Stay away from people as much as you can. But it's there's lots of bad things going on. I mean, it's bad that this virus is going around, but it's also bad that our economy is tanking, and it's also bad if you start getting to some of the government stuff. Governments tend to overreach a little bit, and so it's like, well, how do we balance all of those things in a way that you can hold contradictory views and say, just because you think one thing is bad doesn't mean you can't think the other thing is bad as well. And I think that's just, I think that's one of those things where you have to learn how to balance that. And it takes some work. You got to put some thought into it. Overall, I think my family is doing well through all of this. It's nice that I get to keep working and keep my job, but that can change at a moment's notice. It's going to be tougher with my wife not working for a couple of months. We just bought a house. We just had a month before all of this stuff hit. My wife's car died. Car's paid off, and now we got to take out an extra car. So it's like we got the mortgage payment went up. The had no car payment to adding a car payment to her losing her essentially losing her job for a couple of months, and you just adjust. And so, we cut back on our spending, as much as possible. And the tax thing helped. So we had to pay, we have to pay taxes coming up. The government doesn't owe us money. We got to pay the government, but they pushed everything out. So we kind of have this, stash of cash for now that's sitting there just in case. That was, unexpected that we were able to do that. So instead of just spending that, we're just going to hold on to that for a little while until it's time. And then when it's time, we'll pay it. But I think overall, our family, at least me, I feel very confident through this, because I think anytime that there's disruption in, especially major disruption in our society and culture and our, even our own families, there's opportunity. There's opportunity to be had here in lots of different ways. And I think opportunities to spend more time with our family, to realign our priorities with our family, with our relationships, with the relationship that we have with our jobs, with one another. And it's an opportunity to look for, economic opportunities. I'm taking the time to sit down and learn new things. I've done a lot of online classes at this time. I've got, because I've had extra time at home. And so just investing in myself and, trying to be better, man. It's just.
No, it's big. I mean, just using, all the free time now that some of us find ourselves with. I know, I'm kind of in a position where I'm torn. I still, my job is still open. I'm one of the few construction sites in the Jersey City area that's still open through all this. And I'm happy because I know people that are out of work right now. They're, struggling financially, and it's scary. It's, that barely keeping your head above water feeling. Like, I've been there before. But at the same time, it's hard for me because I'm much closer to the epicenter, so to speak. Yeah. I'm just a mile away from New York every day. I'm looking at the skyline, and it's bad. It's bad here. If you come out to my house area, like the town I live in, you really wouldn't think much is going on. But when you go a little closer, it's just that ominous feeling of tension. Something's. I've had a few guys get sick. My own sister got sick. But she lives in London, and she's she pushed through. She's fine now. She's a young, healthy kid. She's made from good stock, good genes. But I feel confident that we're going to be able to come out of this whole thing. But honestly, I feel tense all day, and it's like that. It weighs on you. I feel like if I had more hair, it would be going grayer right now. But I'm just trying to stay safe. My wife is able to work from home. Obviously, my son is home. My in-laws are here. So, they're not really going stir crazy so much. I'm able to take my son out to ride bikes a little bit in the afternoons when I get home. But I worry that the other people that I'm around with my job, particularly, you can't always keep safe distance. There's got to be at least 100 guys working on this site that I work at currently. And it's just not always possible to practice, safe, sanitary practices of work. And it makes me nervous because I feel like sometimes the people that are higher up the ladder than me aren't really looking out for us. It definitely feels like the bottom line is all that matters because there's a lot of things, like I said, just today, I found out a few people on my job tested positive, and it just seems like nothing's being done. So I have that constant conflict going on, and it kind of weighs on you. It makes me more tired when I get home every day. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just like mental pressure.
Well, when you're closer to city centers, New York City right now is the epicenter of everything in the United States going on. I don't know the exact number, but it's close to half the cases
it's high.
Are just New York City, right? So
yeah, and New Jersey is the second, so I'm kind of screwed no matter where I go.
Yeah, and I can understand being more stressed there, and that's tough. When you sit there and you that's a constant worry. And like I said, you can only control what you do, mm-hmm. and so from your perspective, doing all the right things for yourself, so that the guys that you're working with know that you're doing all the right things, and then you just hope that they reciprocate, right?
Yeah. Well, it's one of those things where you see a lot of the guys that I work with, maybe not work with directly, but other guys on site, and some people are really taking it seriously, and some people just seem like yeah, whatever. Like, this is just they're up there, they smoke joints up there, they're hanging out. Yeah, just pass the joint, and let's go to work. Come on, shut up, stop crying. So it feels like no matter how safe I am, I'm only as safe as the guy near me. But I don't want to make it seem like I'm living under some state of paranoia or anything. Like, I'm holding it together just fine. But it's just just below the surface, that little tension, So Jay, you're home right now most of the time. I hear a lot of people talking about, the home with the wife and kids all the time, like they're driving each other crazy. Is that a thing for you, or do you find that you guys have become kind of closer even, or is any kind of butting heads? How's this all shaking out for you?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing for us really is balancing working on the business as well as family life. And I just started a new blog for the Dad's List, and basically the first series that I'm talking about is exactly that. Now that everybody's working from home, how do you build a business as well as build your family at the same time? When I wake up in the morning, instead of having a certain routine, the first thing I got to work on is, third grade math, and so, my wife and I, we tried, okay, well, I'll work with these kids to do this and you do that. And then we realized, all right, that's not working. So we have a tag team. So first thing in the morning, let's feed them and then let's get the classwork started. Then the other kid wakes up. And so it's that dynamic, that teamwork is what we're experiencing right now to get the kids set up. And then once the kids are set up or school is over, my wife and I basically communicate from the day before about what's on the docket for the day, So she knows I need this amount of time to work on the business. She needs a certain amount of time to work on some other stuff that she's working on. And so we kind of just map that stuff out throughout the day and kind of knock them out. But the biggest thing for us, like I mentioned before, is that family life. So we are being more diligent around quality time with the kids. And so, for example, 2 days in a row, back to back, we watch the Jumanji from 2 years ago, and then we just watched a few hours ago the most recent one that came out. But for the kids, like to watch back to back, and then they never saw the original from '95 with Robin Williams, so they're like, okay, now we got to go watch that one. So again,
yeah, I don't know if that's going to hold up against these new ones.
Right, I know.
I mean, I love Robin Williams just as much as anybody, but I just think the special effects maybe are gonna be a little lacking. But
the kids have been really good with some of the old content. We just finished watching Hook with Robin Williams a few days ago as well.
Classic. We watched it on Netflix too.
Exactly. So they love that, and so it's again our whole goal for my wife and I right now is to provide an environment for the kids that they don't feel stressed out here. And so all they know and all we know is we're doing schoolwork, we're enjoying a lot of quality family time, and mommy and daddy are building a business, and this is what they do when, and that's when we're doing our thing, they're on Roblox or something, or they're on YouTube, so they're not even worried about what we're doing, but they definitely got their
Don't get me started on Roblox.
I know. Trust me, we have limitations. That's a whole nother podcast. But yeah, we are. That is our main goal, and right now it's working for us, and it feels really comfortable when we're home. We feel really good about it. Personally, I've been working on getting better at separating that work versus family time. I'm guilty sometimes. While we're watching a movie, I'm on my iPad or I'm working on something with the business, trying to condense as much as possible. But my kids are the first ones to point it out, like, Daddy, is that more important than family time right now? So I get checked on a regular basis.
I've
guilt tripped into it, right?
I've had that line dropped on me several times.
But overall, we're doing good, man. And again, my wife and I, we just have to have a plan, and we execute it as best as possible while trying to maintain the peace.
You guys are like a well-oiled machine, like perfect teammates. Huh?
Man, after 14 years of marriage, it's something that we have to continue to evolve and get better at. But with new challenges, and the kids are at new ages, and I'm different than how I was back then, and she's different from who she was. So it's constantly adjusting and going through those ups and downs and try to stay centered as much as possible. But we try not to let the outside stuff impact what's going on the inside.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's great. Tony, how about you? Has anything really changed much at home aside from your wife being home?
I don't know if it's changed as much as, probably most of it is making dinner. Like, you got to think about what you got to eat every single day. It's not, you can't just go and, I mean, I guess you can go and stop off at places. But like I said, when you start cutting back on things, food is one of those things that you cut back on. You can't go out to eat or whatever. So we've tried to do it where we do things like, pizza on Fridays or whatever, or do some sort of takeout on a Friday night. So we still feel like we're doing something, right?
Yeah.
But for the most part, it's like, well, now we got to cook something every single day. And I love cooking, and it's a lot of, like, if I'm going to work and coming back and then cooking, I enjoy it, but it's still a lot of work. There's a lot of thought that has to go into, when you're planning out, make sure the groceries are there and make sure that you have what you need, and you're not throwing away hundreds of dollars of vegetables every time. Yeah. So we've adjusted.
This is bad already?
Right.
We just bought it.
Yeah, I've done some, I did some sort of milk in my cereal, and it was like, oh, yeah, this already went bad, and I had to throw all the cereal.
Gotta check it first.
That's the worst. And I think
Did you ever pour the cereal and then realize there's not enough milk left?
Oh, yeah. Well, that's not as bad as having, as ruining all the cereal with the spoiled milk, but I can deal with not enough milk.
Versus chunky milk.
Just water. Pour water in it. It's fine. Just throw it away at that point.
Yeah, no, go to something else.
Yeah.
No, but we've had to adjust. So, we've done things like we bought more frozen stuff. And stuck it in the freezer because it's like, well, let's throw some a bag of veggies in the microwave, or rice, or something something quick and easy. So that's been an adjustment. We just spend more time at home. When I'm home, I've got my office, and so when I'm working, I just stay in here. And I expect interruptions from the kids. They come in, they want to see daddy, and that's fine. But like I said, if I am working from home, it's just try to limit some of that. With Jackson, he's 10, almost 11, in 5th grade. He's gonna, it's like the next time he goes to school, he's gonna be in 6th grade in middle school, and it's just like, man, what is going on? And he's gonna miss all of that, all the end of school stuff. And he's been disappointed with all of that.
I've been wondering how does this work for the new classes, like the kids gonna start kindergarten in the fall, and the kids that are just finishing their kindergarten year. Is there going to be some overlap? Do they just move everybody forward? Because I'm sure you guys have noticed the home curriculum, as good as the teachers are, and as hard as everybody's working, and as much as they're trying to make this whole thing work, it's just not the same. It's not the same. They're not getting the same out of it that they would from actually being at school. And I know, obviously, we're limited in what we can do, but do they just kind of push everybody forward and we'll just sort it out next year? Have you heard anything about that?
So far from my kids, the teachers, the first couple of weeks was basically a free for all. They were doing their best to provide content, and which has been great. And then some of the teachers we have daily calls or video calls. At 9:30 in the morning and at 2:00 in the afternoon, and someone like my 5-year-old who's autistic, who has a special set of teachers and counselors and so forth, they've been really amazing, and we'll get on a group video call, 8 of us, and really work out what the next steps are. For my other kids, they just announced to us that they're going to start grading the assignments now. Or starting next week, I believe. So now it's going to be a little bit more structured. So every week they're getting more and more structured. So now that we're going to transition to grading their assignments that they turn in, I think that's going to help with them as far as who goes on to the next grade or not, or do, like you said, maybe they just put everybody on this curve and just say, hey, everybody gets a freebie going to the next grade, since not everything was mapped out to the fullest. But
I've been struggling. The times my son is good about having most of his work done by the time I get home from work, because for me nothing really has changed that much because I'm still working, and everybody's already home when I get home normally. So it's it seems basically the same. But now sometimes I'll see my son working and he'll ask me for help, and I don't think I've ever felt so dumb in the last decade or so. I'm like, I know how to do this, but it's hard to teach it, to convey that information, and it requires all the patience I have sometimes, because I don't want to get mad at him. He's just learning this stuff, and it's my own fault for not being able to convey the information.
Well,
But
I wouldn't be so hard on yourself, man, because at the end of the day, the kids act differently in front of us than they do with their teachers. I got into it with my daughter the other day where she was throwing a tantrum, and I'm like, is that how you would act in front of your classmates and your teacher? No, you would have more composure than that. So have the same composure when you're here. So there's it's a difference when you're on home court. So
you're absolutely right. There are different people at home than they are at school.
Yeah, so don't put that kind of pressure on yourself, because I know for me, 2 things I knew when I was going to be a parent, or even way before I was going to be a parent. I said, man, when I'm a dad, there's 2 things that I know I'm not going to like. 1, that's waking up early to take the kids to school, and then 2, that's doing homework with them. Because once I left school, once I graduated, I was like, man, I'm good. So I paid my dues. I've done the time, So for me now, and we've even discussed homeschooling in the past, and we've talked to friends who do that successfully. And once we got some details, we immediately knew that was not for us. So all respect goes to those who homeschool. All respect to the teachers who do this every single day. But my wife and I, the past few weeks is proof that we called it like this. We weren't cut out for this, but at the end of the day, we have to rise to the challenge, because at the end of the day, it's for the improvement and the betterment of our children. And so now we may not have full long school days like they normally would have. The days are abbreviated.
I'm sure the lunch is better.
Right. It's a win for me. It's a win for them, I think. But at the end of the day, like you said, it's tough for us to adjust. We didn't get a degree in this. We have a certain amount of patience for parenting, and I didn't plan on having additional patience for teaching, which takes a whole other level of patience. So no, kudos to them, and yeah, don't put it all on yourself.
Well, I definitely take my hat off to teachers, because dealing with one kid can be challenging enough. Dealing with 20-something, oof. It's like, give them all the money they want. Just give them the money. They deserve it.
Well, I think it's more difficult with younger kids too. Than like Jackson's pretty self-sufficient, so he gets all of his work. They're using Microsoft Teams now, but he gets all of his work on there, and he just sits in front of his laptop and he just goes through his assignments. And I'll check on him and say, hey, you got everything done? Did you do your social studies? Did you do your reading? Did you do your math? And I'll look through all of that. And sometimes I'll help him print stuff out or upload something. But he knows the computer. He knows what he's doing, and I just let him go. So he'll spend a few hours with it, and
that's
I'll
great.
Just check it, which is so much. It's so much nicer. There's times when he has questions about stuff, and I'll play devil's advocate on some of his, like if I look at something I know it's wrong and be like, so let's look at this, look at number 4 again.
You sure about that one?
Yeah, you sure? Yeah.
Tell me how you came up with that.
But no, it's weird because, you mentioned that about, are we going to move, they're just going to move these kids along or whatever. But I read an article today that they were pushing back the bar exam for lawyers, in different states. And, every state's handling it a little bit differently, but there are some states that I think that they're saying, well, you can practice law, as long as you're underneath somebody else, or you can practice law and then we'll come, for some period of time, and then we'll come back and we'll retest you. And they're saying that they, for any of these professional certifications, whether it's hairdresser or doctor, lawyer, there's all sorts that you got to have some sort of certification to actually do that profession, that it's making them examine what they're going to need, or what they're going to do, because right now they need a lot of these medical professionals, and they don't want to keep putting this gate in front of them.
Yeah.
To let them through, and they're saying, do we really need these things? And to some of the answers are, maybe we don't, and they're adjusting. So I think you're going to see some of that change and adjust throughout society here in, over the next several years.
I'm pretty sure I recall seeing something about that in Italy. They took all like med students that were in their final year, and they said, all right, you guys can just jump right in now. Like, we can just we'll bypass all that. We need you. So we need you to step up.
Well, and I think some of the medical stuff, it's only certified in I think law is the same way, but you're only certified in your state. And if you're going to go across state lines, you got to have a different certification. And so what they're saying is, this state will trust this state, and so on. So they're opening that up as well.
Yeah, it reminds me of like everybody I know from Russia like came here and said, "Oh, in my country I was engineer." It's like, okay, well, it doesn't count in this country, So it's like crossing state lines. We need the Jersey license here.
Yep.
We were talking about school before. I've actually been really impressed with some of the like curriculum that they have been able to put forward. I know they had my son, like, he still had music class today. So, and he, I talked to my wife on the way home. She said, "Oh, Ty needs your help. Could you sit down with him once you get home?" I said, "Okay." So, I showered up and everything, disinfected, and then we sat down. And the assignment was actually to use this thing on Google. It was like I'm pretty sure it was Google. It was a melody maker. And like a little song maker where you just kind of like, they shows you like the scale and the little do, re, mi, fa, sol. And the assignment was just, make a melody with these notes. And he was like, "I don't know what to do." And I was like, "Oh, buddy, finally something I can help you with." So we were just sitting at the, the kitchen counter making a little song. And
Is that where it has the beats and it does like a loop and comes back? And
Yeah.
And
I just watched his face light up. And he was really, that was something that he enjoyed. And I was like, I'm so happy that I found something where I know exactly how to help you. And I was just thinking, like, we never had anything like this. Like, even like, I mean, if you were in band, I guess they would, you had a whole other thing. But it's just the capabilities now are so much more expansive. And it's just, I'm happy for him. I'm kind of a little envious at the same time.
Yeah, I wish I went to school now than when I did. Maybe I would have paid more attention. Right?
Oh, I don't know. Hey, let's not start getting ahead of ourselves here. Let's not talk crazy. I have a hard enough time keeping my eyes open anytime I'm in some kind of classroom setting. It's really bad. How did you guys explain this to your kids? Like when everything first started going, like how were you able to get the message across? Because I still, even now, I don't feel like my son, he's only 9, I don't feel like he's fully understanding it, because sometimes he'll say something like it doesn't make sense, or he's like, "Oh, we can't go to the grocery store because coronavirus." I was like, no, we can go, but we just have to be careful. We wear our masks, we wash our hands, we don't get close to anybody else. And then like anytime he hears somebody sneeze, he'll say, "Is that coronavirus?" I'm like, "No, it's not. You're relax. Like, we've been in the house for 2 weeks now. Like, you're not going to get it from them." But like, what have you guys found that you've been able to get your kids to understand? I know, like, Tony, your son is a little older, so I'm sure it's probably easier.
Yeah, it's easier when they're older. Well, I don't know if it's easier anyway. Jolie is 4, and she doesn't know any different. Just go wash your hands and do what we tell you, kind of thing. And she does. So and she doesn't need to know, right? She doesn't need to know any of that. And with Jackson, because he's older, his thing is he does have high anxiety, and so he worries about things. So what I've done is I would bring up, like, Johns Hopkins University has their website, and they have all the statistics there of number of active cases and closed cases and number of deaths and where they're located. And so I just present him with facts. He's very facts driven. So it's like, are all the people here? And I say, well, here's the county we live in. Here's the number of people who live in the county. Here's the number of people who've gotten it, and here's the number of people who've died. And we go through and say, okay, well, let's analyze the people who've died. And you see, again, you see some of the underlying conditions and reasons. So it's like, okay, if you go through this tree of risk, how risky is it for you, to get it? And let him come to some of those some of his own conclusions. Oh, that's not okay, so it's not as risky for me. And you say, but do you need to be careful? Yeah. I was like, Jackson, everything's risky. Driving your car is risky. Playing on a skateboard is risky. There's risk all throughout. And yeah, we have coronavirus, but there's lots of other viruses and diseases and all sorts of stuff that's out there. There's a million ways, there's a million ways to die, right?
Yes.
But what's the chance that that's going to happen? And you can't live your life totally in fear of those things. You manage the risk. You be careful where you need to. And so when you drive, you put your seatbelt on. Why? Because, the chances are that you're not going to get an accident. But if you're wearing your seatbelt, your chances of surviving or not being injured they're a lot better. Mm-hmm. And so you wear your seatbelt. Those are the kinds of things where, as long as you approach things, I think with some logic and reason, then you don't have to live out of fear. So that's kind of how I handle it. With him, he just needs to see the facts. I just had to present facts to him and show him numbers, but that's how his brain is wired.
Oh, I mean, that's great that you found a way that works. That's What about you, Jay?
No, we have not had to go in that much detail for our kids. And when I say our kids, we have 4, but they're 9, 7, 5, and 2. And my 5-year-old is autistic, so he doesn't know what's going on. But the 7-year-old and my 9-year-old are the main ones we have to kind of communicate with. And so when all this was going on and the transition, for them, it was really just to make sure that they understood that there were a lot of people getting sick. We did not go into the details of how it began or anything like that. It was just, hey, a lot of people are getting sick and it's spreading very, very quickly across the world, and a lot of people are being impacted. There are people who are passing away because of it, and there are people who are getting better. But we are, by us doing the things that we're doing, we're making sure that we stay safe, and again, explaining about, gloves on, mask on, and explaining that to them. So when I do have to leave the house, then we do that. In some scenarios, they're like, hey, maybe we should, Grubhub or DoorDash it to us and so forth, And so they're still somewhat conscious of the potential risk of leaving the house, but they haven't forced us into why every single thing. I think they have a general understanding of what's going on. And again, I think by us keeping them distracted with all the things that we do at home, it's minimizing the level of concern for them. And then also they're on YouTube as well. So, you have the memes and the coronavirus and the songs with the beats and all that kind of stuff. So they'll play the beat, the song.
I can't make it through an entire dinner without hearing that.
Right. It's real. So every few minutes you hear one of my kids, coronavirus.
Oh my God.
But
if somebody coughs or sneezes, ugh.
Yeah.
Then you get the finger pointing too.
Yeah, but again, it's one of those things where one person may say that is taking the situation lightly, but another person may say that this is a way that our society is choosing to cope and to keep each other entertained and to keep each other happy and out of the mud. And for those who are not impacted directly, we can stay positive. And so when my kids are watching these videos where they're doing these dance routines and they want to mimic the dance routines, things like that, it's entertaining, and I'm glad they have that as a distraction. But they still come to us if something's really on their mind. But at this point, they overall just know that it is serious. They know that people are dying, but they also know that people are getting well. They know that it's spreading really fast, but at the same time, we are doing the right things necessary at home to minimize our risk. One of the big things that hit us was my mother, their grandmother, has not been able to come and see them. And one time my mother had to drop off something for the kids, and she just stayed at the front door, or she didn't even make it to the front door. So it was just a matter of her leaving it in the driveway, and then from a distance, the kids start to run towards the front door, and I had to grab them and say, "Hey, hold on," just wave to grandma and stuff like that. So that kind of hurt them. So that was kind of a big blow to them emotionally. But again, based on the way my wife and I have tried to minimize how much detail we give them, they understood, and they're in a good place. And they still FaceTime with grandma, from time to time as well. So technology, maximizing it to its fullest capacity. So
yeah, and I'll just add quickly to that, because I think you get into some developmental stuff with children, in thinking about just the size of their world. When you have an infant, an infant is held close. It's face to face, and their world is what's right in front of them. When they're when dad or mom's in front of them, they're like, oh, mom and dad are real because they're there. And you move away, they start crying because they don't know that if they can't see it, that you still exist.
Mm-hmm.
And as they grow older, their world gets a little bit bigger, but not that big. They're in a crib, they're in a bed or their bedroom, and their family is what they know. Their immediate family is their world, and then they get older and their world expands a little bit, and then they have classmates and they want to know how their classmates are doing. So I think, Jay, you said it right, is like, I think the way that you explain it to them is explain it to them in ways that just impact their world. So if it doesn't impact their world in any way, there's not really a whole lot that you really need to go into. As their world gets bigger, then you explain it bigger, to them. I think as adults, we can tend to bring adult things into our children's world, and I think it's dangerous to do that with kids. It's not healthy to do that. My son was like, yeah, I heard Nancy Pelosi said this and Trump is going to do that. I'm like, whoa, you don't even, okay, so yeah, you should know who the president is, but Speaker of the House, man, you're listening to way too much news.
What are you watching?
We're going to turn
C-SPAN?
Yeah. Like, what are you doing? What are you getting all this from? I said, you're turning off the news. I was like, Jackson, don't listen to the news. And even now for myself, just to keep some level of sanity, you check the news, check the headlines, see what's going on, and then turn it off. Yeah. You can live in that, and it's not healthy.
No, you're 100% right about that. I stopped with the news last week. I was waiting to hear what they were going to do with the stay-at-home order, and then once I found out and I knew I wasn't on the list, I was like, okay, I don't need to hear anything else.
Right.
Because that definitely just kind of creates this snowball effect, and it creates paranoia, and people start going nuts.
But I also think that we have to understand our kids as well, and knowing what they can handle. A perfect example, we were just watching the movie Jumanji, and there was a joke that you could tell was a little bit more for an adult, but my trigger reaction was to kind of like, hey kids, don't worry about that, because my daughter was like, why are you and mom snickering at that joke? I don't get it. And my knee-jerk reaction was just to, don't worry about it, not a big deal, not even that funny. And then my wife kind of gave me the eyes, kind of like, come on. Like, based on the level of communication we've had with the two older ones, she felt that it was okay to not shield them or hide something from them or shelter them. It was more so of, hey, they're already used to a certain level of open communication with us, so why are we going to backtrack now? And so she, in the most politically savvy way possible, explained the joke. And my daughter was like, oh, okay, all right, hit play. And that was it. It was over.
Do you recall what the joke was?
Yeah, what's the joke?
Nah, we ain't doing that, man. We ain't doing that.
Yeah. Oh, come on, we're grown-ups. We can handle it.
Don't worry about it.
You watch the movie, you probably figure out.
You're old. No, I catch that a lot. My son, he likes to look over my shoulder whenever I'm on the phone. Of course, with like Instagram and the memes that are everywhere you look. Sometimes he'll see me laugh at something. He says, "Oh, what does that mean?" And I'm like, "Is he ready for this one yet?" And
right.
We make that judgment call on the
too
spot.
Spicy for him.
Right.
Some of them I'm like, listen, this one's not for kids. You need to go sit on the other side right now.
Yeah, I was watching Bert Kreischer with my son the other day.
Oh, which one? Hey, Big Boy?
No. I was not watching that with my son.
Yeah, so we were watching Faces of Death, and he was a little confused.
Man, that's going way back though.
Well, no. Me and my son, we watched Bloodsport.
Oh,
Jean-Claude Van
really?
Damme. So he was a little concerned in the beginning. He's still not really accustomed to seeing movies with blood in them. So when he sees that, I could see sometimes he gets a little uncomfortable. But he was like, "I'm like, this is not real blood. It's it's just a movie." He goes,
Is that is that Bolo Young?
"Yes, Chong Li."
Do you give up?
Say it.
Because I get that one confused with
Kickboxer?
Kickboxer. Yeah.
Both.
Both a great movie, but no, I love Bloodsport. It's like
The nostalgia in that one, I think, is the only thing that keeps it holding up.
He's like, he's doing the.
Are we on Bloodsport 12 yet? 12 or 13?
Actually, a couple weeks ago, I actually made a meme. It was that scene where Van Damme gets blinded and he's just looking around like this. But it showed just in the beginning when he threw the dust in his eye that blinded him. So you don't even see the hand; you just see the dust fly and him doing this. And the caption just says, when my kid sneezes coronavirus directly into my eyes.
That's good. That's good.
So one of the things I've noticed, and this is it's not something I just noticed, with my wife. My wife, one of the things that made me fall in love with her is that she's very caring and very giving. Like she wants to share anything she gets. She wants to share it with the people that she loves, people that she cares about. And she's selfless in that way, and I love that about her. And one thing that she's started doing, and I've been happy to even have a small part in it, is we would go around sometimes to like the small local businesses. Like there was a local bakery, so we bought have to make these like special Easter cookie cakes. So we bought a bunch of them, and we were giving them out to like the families of like friends of my son and like our friends, and just obviously we're not going up shaking hands, but we'll leave them at the door and make the exchange. But just to kind of spread a little joy, and I found that this has been as crazy as the whole thing has been. Like this was actually an opportunity for her to show people that there's people that care. There's still good people out there, and I've been thinking like, what are some of the positives maybe that we've been able to find in this? Like a big one for me. 2 weeks ago, I was able to teach my son how to finally ride a bike, and that was like. That's right on the dad checklist. Like that's got to get done.
That's a checklist item right there.
Yeah, we were a little late because we had some bike issues for the last 2 years. I got him a bike that was a little too small or too big, and it just nothing was working right. So then finally we got him a brand new one from Walmart, and I'm like, listen, we're doing this. So we did a few rides with the training wheels. And I was getting frustrated because we could have walked faster than we were riding. Yeah. So I'm like, all right, it's time to step it up. We're gonna get this done. And you know what? We did it, and I think that might be the most proud I was as a father. But just in general, what are some positives maybe that you guys have seen or been able to come across through all this?
One thing I can say is communication. I think that this has forced a lot of people to communicate more. And more than just phone calls, I know a lot of data bills are gone up because they are streamed. There is so much FaceTime being streamed. There are so many Zoom calls. There are so many Google, So, but I think that's one of the positives. I think that one of a good friend of mine that I haven't spoken to in years, we used to work together, and she posted on Instagram, and I responded, and I was like, "Hey, long time, since we've connected." And she was like, "Yeah, we definitely got to catch up." And then my response was, "Well, yeah, we gotta set up a FaceTime call soon." But to know that that's the default now of how we communicate is interesting. But at the same time, my aunt had a birthday, just the other day that I haven't spoken to her in a very long time. My mom reminded me, gave me her updated number, and we spent maybe 2 to 3 minutes on coronavirus. But then that ushered in a whole other conversation, and me and her just ended up catching up. We were on the phone for like maybe 45 minutes, and it felt so good to talk to my aunt that I haven't spoken to in a very long time, and it was great, So something that I picked up, a coworker I used to have, she passed away, and that hit me really, really hard. And I spoke to a counselor about the situation, and in that moment, one of the things I felt was, when you're someone who has a lot of friends or close people or people that you care about, it's very difficult and unrealistic to think that you can keep up with everyone all the time.
Yeah.
But I had a certain level of guilt at that moment because, man, it's been a long time since I connected with that person, right? Especially once we stopped working together day to day. But one thing they told me, and I took with me ever since, was the moment someone comes into your mind, just off rip, maybe something reminds you on TV, or you ran into, or somebody looks like that person in the supermarket, give them a phone call or shoot them a text, and just, you don't have to say anything more than, hey, what's up? You just came across my mind. Just want to see how you're doing. And you'd be surprised how often they may be in the middle of a crisis, and they just need to talk, or they are in the middle of a big celebration, and man, I'm so glad we reconnected. Thank you for that text, man. Let me tell you what's going on. We're getting ready to have a baby, or and it just sparks all of this stuff that you didn't expect. So I think that this level of communication we've all been having ever since this outbreak has happened is a huge positive. And there are more people connecting now than ever before because of it. And again, more than just phone calls, but even utilizing video calls like this to communicate so we can see each other and share those experiences. Birthday parties, I'm seeing people celebrate birthdays through these video chats and singing all together while on one screen you see the cake. So I think that's a huge positive.
We just had a friend of my son, his birthday unfortunately was this weekend. So we, some of the parents got together, and with his parents, they set up times when they would go by the front of they would drive by the house, and the family was sitting outside having dinner, and people would come up and leave a gift or something for him, and everybody would, make signs just to, it's just so he doesn't miss out. As a 9-year-old kid, that's a very important day in your life. Mm-hmm. What about you, Tony? What are some positives?
Just thinking about it, So I'm a thinker, so I take things, I sit and I contemplate or whatever, so I take things to a deeper level, probably than they should go, but that's what I do. So I think for me, we talked about opportunity, that this is a great time for opportunity. And for me, I look at character traits of things, and I look at the country as a whole, and I look towards myself, but I'd say maybe the first one is we get an opportunity to learn humility, because, for a while we think we're invincible. The economy was doing great, everyone's doing awesome, and this thing comes along, and we think that we're so far along in science and all of that, and medicine, and here we are, right?
Here we are, indeed.
Here, we shut down the entire economy. Everyone's staying home. We can't do what we want to do, and it's humbling. And to, if we sit and learn that and learn to be humbled, I think that can go a long way, going forward, because it is a humbling experience. I think the other thing is, I think gives us an opportunity to lose. When you start stacking up the wins, you think and this maybe goes along with the humility thing. You start stacking up those wins, you think that you're always going to win, and it's nice to lose sometimes. And, we talk about things like birthdays. Jolie celebrated her birthday, and we had a party and all that planned, and we had to cancel. And Jackson's got a birthday coming up, and he may not get to go. And we had spring break this last week with Jackson, had him home all this whole time. We had planned on having Jolie's sister, who's around Jackson's age, and grandma come down from Ohio, and that got canceled. And so these things start stacking up as these losses, and so it gives us an opportunity to learn how to deal with loss. Because these are real things, and anytime you experience any kind of loss, it's important to grieve those losses. You can take them on, you can bury them, and they're going to stick with you for a while. But we've all lost, in this, at this time. We've all lost something. Some things big, some people have lost their lives, lost family members, lost friends. And some of the losses are, small, and maybe they're not so small. It's like, lost dinner out. That's a loss. Mm-hmm. That's something that you had, and now you don't have it. You don't even have the opportunity to do some of those things. And then I think Thanksgiving, just being thankful for, we have an opportunity to be thankful for the things that we do have when we have them, and not to take things for granted. Like you said, you have all these, Jay said with his friends and his aunt, you always had the opportunity there to contact them. And now to be thankful that you have ways to stay in contact with them, thankful for the relationships that you do have, thankful for the time with your family. And when you have your health, thankful for being healthy, thankful for having a job. These things that can be so easily taken for granted, or even we feel like we're entitled to some of those things, and then we're not. They can be taken from us so easily. And so, I always tell my son Jackson, we don't get mad, we don't get angry for the things that we don't have. He may miss out on an opportunity to go to one of his summer camps, and I said, there's nothing we can do about that. But what do you have? And let's be thankful for those things. So for me, those are the positive things that come out of all of this.
Well, what you were talking about, especially with the humility and this being a humbling experience, that actually kind of dovetails perfectly into what I was gonna change gears into this. There's a new segment now I'm doing for the show. I'm calling it Humble Pie. So I spoke to Jay a little earlier about this. I'm asking my guests to share an embarrassing story from their life, something that maybe humbled you, but this is more in the sense of service, where just letting people know, like, listen, these things happen to everybody. Maybe somebody's stressing over something. They're standing in the shower like, oh my God, I can't believe I said that to my coworker. Something dumb, anything. But just to remind us all, like, nobody's perfect. We're all human. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to do dumb stuff. But don't let it define you, So, and just in the spirit of fairness, I'll go first. This is actually a story I've told on one of my other episodes of the podcast. Any of my listeners or friends and family know I used to be a musician. We played a lot of live shows. And when I was in my first band, we got very lucky. We got asked to open for a very big band in our genre, so to speak. So we were playing a show in West Philadelphia. And, we had 2 nights back to back. So the first show was in Hoboken, and then the second show was in Philly. So the first night went amazing. We were all coming off this high. The crowd was amazing. Like, we played well. Everything was tight. Everything sounded good. So now the second night, we drive to Philly. It's kind of crappy weather, so it's a rough start. Load in, you're getting soaked. So now we start playing, and my 2 guitar players used to do a move where they would take the guitars and swing them around their back, and catch it and then keep playing. So unfortunately, what happened was I got a little too close to my guitar player, Drew, and when he swung his guitar, it swung around, and he noticed I was too close midway through, and then tried to move and adjust it. But what happened was the strap somehow caught on his shoulder, and it hit him in the face in the middle of the show. And I felt so bad. I was like, oh, I'm really sorry. I couldn't stop in the middle of the song and say that, but he knew what I was getting at. But in the process of me trying to move, I knocked my bass out of tune, and I didn't have a tuner. And we're playing it's like a professional show here. We're with a band. They have songs in Guitar Hero. They're known, and there's people here, and they expect to see a good performance. And now I'm playing my bass, and it's out of tune pretty badly. And I see in the crowd, people kind of notice, something sounds wrong. You know what I mean? And I'm just, in my own mind, mortified. I'm just like, oh my God, everything is going wrong. And it was just the hardest feeling. And then it was just, everything fell apart after that. And I came off the stage, and we went down into they had a basement. It wasn't even a big enough club where you had a green room or anything. You're just in the basement. They had chairs stacked up and stuff. and I was just like so depressed. And I realized that there was another band member from another big name band that was there, and he saw the whole thing, and I'm like, we just ruined our chances of ever making it now. And I was so embarrassed, but then I realized, like, you know what? It doesn't matter. It's one show. Like, we suck it up and we move on. But it made for a fun story after that. So that was my my story of making a fool of myself in front of an entire crowded club in West Philly.
You didn't have like some giant bass solo, did you?
No. But it was I knocked it out of tune so badly that even most people like to hear a song and nobody really notices the bass, especially not in the type of music we were playing. Like, it was very heavy metal, and it was bad enough that people noticed. Like, people were like, something's wrong here. Like, something's not right. Like, these guys must just suck, you know?
Was it like Pantera or something? You're like, dude.
Yeah, I mean, I would actually probably say it is heavier than Pantera. Like, I was about 22, 21, 22. I was much more into like the heavier scene back in those days. I've since expanded my tastes, but
Jay only listens to yacht rock.
Yacht rock. You a big fan of Christopher Cross?
That's right. Oh man, I love Christopher Cross.
Hey, who doesn't?
That's right.
No, I'm much into much softer stuff now. Oh, the same night, actually, right after the show was over, I managed to see, there was some girl that was a cute girl, and I was trying to talk to her, and I'm like, the night's not a total loss. And some drunk guy came out, like, I was sitting down they had like a bar attached, and he comes out, like, hey man, you were in the band, right? And he goes to like shake my hand while holding the beer, and it just ends up basically pouring the beer into my lap as I was trying to talk to this girl. And I was like, well, that is fitting. That's a fitting end for this night. Right in my lap, so it just looks like I wet myself.
Yeah, just like, we're done.
Yeah.
This is it.
I'm like, that's the sign. Like, we should just call it quits. All right, who's next?
I can go next. So very recently, in the past few weeks, I think as all parents, we yell at our kids when they leave the place a mess, and one night I left some papers out on the floor that I was planning to clean up. I was like, I'll just do it when everybody goes to bed and so forth. But I left those papers on the floor, completely forgot about them, put the kids up to bed, got them all set up, and then on my way back downstairs, as soon as I hit the living room, I was on my phone, not paying attention, and I completely slipped, like legs up in the air, and fell on my back. And then the first thing that I thought of was, somebody's gonna see this video, because I have a Nest camera that shows the whole downstairs.
You're
and
just
so
like Mike
I
Tyson on the hoverboard.
So I immediately went to the footage and make sure I deleted that. I was like, all right, cool. Let me just see how bad it looks. Yeah, that looks pretty bad. All right, I'm gonna take care of that. So, but yeah, that was probably my
Alexa started laughing at you.
Yeah, she has no clue that had even happened, and there's no warnings for her because she's not gonna see the footage.
Yeah. All of a sudden, Alexa comes on. Do you need medical assistance?
Right.
Big Brother's watching.
Yeah.
I'm falling and I can't get up.
I maybe have a couple, so I'll tell you one funny one and one serious one. So I think the funny one, it was back in middle school. So I wrote about this on my blog, but it's my most embarrassing school story from, I was in 8th grade, 7th grade, somewhere around that time frame. Went to the school dance. I had a girl that I liked, Stacy White. She sat behind me in some of my classes. She lived in my neighborhood, cute girl, blonde hair, blue eyes, kind of thing. I guess it's a type I have. And she, she was standing over there, and I'd been dancing, with my friends. And I was small. I was tiny in middle school. Girls wouldn't have anything to do with me. I didn't hit puberty till late. So I was like this little kid, and you have all these other, kids starting to grow facial. Of course, now it looks like I got all this facial.
Yeah.
But it was just, it was bad. And so I went to, I finally worked up the courage to go ask her to dance, and walked across the dance floor, and for, slow song coming up, I said, Stacy, my friend Ryan wants to dance. And then I turned around, and in my cardigan with the hypercolor shirt underneath, and my Z Cavaricis with the rolled up, the rolled up jeans, I made my way back and said to my friend Ryan, he's like, did you ask her? What'd she say? And I was like, I told her you wanted to dance with her. Yeah. And so he walked over and danced with her, and essentially talked about me liking her, and so that didn't work out so well for me. I was so embarrassed, for the rest of middle school and high school or whatever.
That's the hardest feeling.
Living with that.
That's the hardest feeling, especially at that age, like approaching a girl. It's the most intimidating thing.
And then, all of her friends, and so everybody knows, right? So that was just bad. And I think for on the more serious side, when I went through divorce several years ago, and I was dealing with some addiction issues, and ended up going to like a recovery group, Celebrate Recovery, and it was at this church I'd never been to before, and I remember pulling into there and going like, I don't need this. This is for people who struggle with this, and this, and then it hit me. I'm like, but yet here I am. So here I am, and I'm gonna go through this, and it was one of those things where it hit me in a way where I realized how prideful I was, how prideful I had been, and then having to acknowledge to myself that I did have an issue, I did have a problem, to the point where I needed to go to a recovery group, and so that was definitely a slice of humble pie, and I'm reminded of that often, just when things are pointed out about me and things that I don't like. I'm not a perfect person by any stretch of the imagination. You can ask my wife. But
I feel like our wives are very similar.
Well, it's like when things are pointed out about you, when someone says something about you, you just go, maybe it's true. Yep. Maybe there's some truth to it. And if you can acknowledge and say, yeah, maybe there's, and it may not be fully true, may not be wholly true, or they may not know the whole thing, but there may be some aspect of it, and you just go, you know what, I got to own that.
Well, guys, I really appreciate you sharing these stories. I find that it's fun, but it's also there's value in it. You know what I mean? And it's humbling, and some of us need to be humbled, I think, a little bit, just to remind ourselves that we're all human and we all make mistakes. Listen, it's always a pleasure talking with you guys. It's the second time we've done this, and hopefully in the future we could do more. But I just want to say thank you for jumping on here tonight.
Thanks for having us.
It's been awesome. It's been a lot of fun.
All right. Do you guys have anything else you want to add before we get out of here?
I will say, who's your buddy? Is it Rob?
Oh, Rob. Yeah, episode 54.
Dude, the sins of our father.
Yep. Got a lot of feedback from that episode.
Oh my gosh! I listened to that thing. That thing had me in tears.
Yeah, that was a rough one.
That was a pretty powerful episode. I was like, I didn't have an abusive father or whatever, but for some reason, just identifying, just with being that little kid. As kids, and you get hurt by something, and it's like you don't grow out of it. You know, if you don't deal with it, you definitely, but you carry that as men, and you got to deal, you know, you got to deal with that in later on in life and how it affects you and all that. Dude, that was one of the best episodes, best podcast I've ever listened to.
Well,
so.
all the credit goes to Rob on that one for, you know, having the stones to come on here and share his story. I've known Rob for a very long time, and I know it's not easy, but you know, I think he's good at conveying like the feeling of being somewhere. You know what I mean? Like, so.
Yeah, good storyteller.
Yeah, so he's always been like that. He's very good speech giver. They used to say back when we were in high school and he was on the football team, some of the other guys that we were friends with, like, you know, every time Rob comes into the locker room, it's like he thinks he's in the movie Varsity Blues. Yeah, no, shouts out to him. That was yeah.
And he's got whipped cream and something for some reason. I don't know.
Oh
wait, different scene from Varsity.
Oh boy, I hope he hears that. All right. So, well, like I said, thanks again, guys, for doing this. I appreciate it. So,
Thanks, man.
Well, there you have it. That was my conversation with LeVar and Tony O from the Dad's List podcast. Make sure you guys subscribe to their show. Make sure you listen. You can find them wherever you get your podcasts. And make sure you check out their website, thedadslist.com, and sign up to be part of their online community of dads. You know, it's a great thing. These guys are they're solid dudes, and they're really trying to do the right thing. They're out there fighting the good fight. So, you know, as always, my hat goes off to them, and much love and respect going their way. And if you're fans of this show, make sure you follow us on Instagram. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe or stream or download wherever you get your podcasts. If you have any questions, any suggestions, anything you want to hear about, make sure you reach out to us at APodAmongstMen@gmail.com for any questions, comments, or concerns. And as always, we'll see you guys next week. Thanks a lot.